They called me into the conference room at 8:03 a.m. The CEO looked straight at me and said, "You're no longer a fit for our new vision." They didn't know I'd filed that patent under my name 6 months ago. The mahogany table reflected my calm face, but underneath, my fingers traced the edge of my phone where the confirmation email sat safely archived. Victor's cologne mixed with the sterile office air as he slid the termination papers across to me. "We appreciate your contributions," he continued, "but the company is moving in a different direction." My name is Naomi Clark, and until 8:03 this morning, I was the lead mechanical engineer at Orion Verde Labs, one of Austin's most promising private renewable energy companies, 34 years old, MIT graduate, holder of 7 patents in thermal dynamics, and apparently no longer a cultural fit for the company I'd helped build from a 20-person startup to a 300-employee powerhouse. The conference room still smelled like yesterday's burnt coffee and broken promises. Victor Branson, our CEO, sat across from me with 2 HR representatives flanking him like corporate bodyguards. His Italian suit probably cost more than what most of our junior engineers made in a month. I'd watched him transform from a passionate entrepreneur into this, whatever this was. "Naomi," he said, his voice dripping with manufactured concern, "you've been an asset to Orion Verde, but as we prepare for our Series D funding round, we need team members who align with our evolving corporate culture." Evolving corporate culture. That's what they called it when they started replacing engineers with MBAs who couldn't tell a heat exchanger from a radiator. What Victor didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 6 months ago, I'd made a decision that would soon make this moment irrelevant. The organic waste-to-energy converter I'd been developing wasn't just another project gathering dust in our R&D lab. It was revolutionary. A device that could transform organic waste into electricity with an efficiency rate that made every existing technology look like stone tools. I'd spent 3 years perfecting it, 3 years of 16-hour days, missed family dinners, and relationships that crumbled because I was married to equations and prototypes. The breakthrough came during a particularly brutal all-nighter last winter. I'd been running simulations on thermal pressure modulation when I discovered a pattern everyone else had missed. By adjusting the pressure differentials in precise intervals I'd encoded in my proprietary software, the energy conversion rate jumped from the industry standard of 35% to an unprecedented 87%. That night, sitting alone in the lab at 3:45 a.m., I made a choice. I filed the patent application under my name, not Orion Verde Labs. Technically, everything I created in that lab belonged to the company. My employment contract was clear about that, but there was a loophole: work done on personal time, using personal resources, remained personal property. I'd been careful. Every critical development happened on my laptop, in my apartment. During the weekends, I was supposedly consulting for other firms. "I understand," I told Victor, keeping my voice steady. The termination letter sat between us like a chess piece waiting to be moved. "May I ask what specific aspects of my performance led to this decision?" He shifted uncomfortably. "It's not about performance, Naomi. You're brilliant, we all know that. But leadership feels you're too focused on individual projects rather than collaborative initiatives. Individual projects, like the converter that would revolutionize waste management and energy production globally. The same converter they'd been pushing me to document in the company's internal systems for months. I'd stalled, citing the need for more testing, more refinement. In reality, I was protecting what I'd built." "I see," I said, reaching for the papers. "I assume you'll want me to complete a full handover of my current projects." "That won't be necessary," Victor replied too quickly. Morrison will be taking over your responsibilities immediately." Dr. Morrison, the new VP of Engineering who'd been shadowing me for weeks, asking probing questions about the converter's mechanics. He'd even tried to access my personal laptop once, claiming he needed to review some calculations. I'd politely declined and reported the incident to IT as a security concern. "And my research the converter project?" I asked, watching Victor's pupils dilate slightly. "All company property, as per your contract," he said. "We'll need your lab access cards, company laptop, and any documentation you have at home related to Orion Verdi projects. This was the moment, the crossroads where I could reveal my ace or continue playing the wounded employee. I chose patience. Of course, I said. Though I'll need time to review the separation agreement with my attorney. Standard procedure, you understand. The HR reps exchanged glances. People rarely asked for legal review. They usually signed quickly, eager to escape the humiliation and secure their severance. That's unusual, Victor said. The terms are quite generous. 3 months severance, continued health benefits, and a positive reference. I appreciate that, I replied, standing. But given the sudden nature of this decision and the sensitive IP involved in my work, I'm sure you can understand my caution. The subtext hung heavy in the air. They needed my signature on their NDA. They needed me silenced before they announced the converter at next month's National Clean Energy Summit. What they didn't need was a patent dispute muddying their Series D funding. Take 48 hours, Victor said, his jaw tight. But we'll need your decision by Friday. I gathered my personal items from my desk under the watchful eye of security. 6 years of my life fit into a cardboard box: photos, awards, a cactus that had somehow survived the fluorescent wasteland of corporate America. My colleagues avoided eye contact, already treating me like a ghost. As I walked through those glass doors for the last time, my phone buzzed, a text from my patent attorney. Final approval came through this morning. Congratulations, Dr. Clark. You officially own the rights to the thermal pressure modulation system. 803M. They'd fired me at the exact moment my patent was approved. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor. The 48 hours they gave me felt like 48 seconds and 48 years simultaneously. I sat in my home office. The separation agreement spread across my desk like an autopsy report. 23 pages of legal terminology designed to bury me. Page 7 was where they'd hidden the poison. Employee acknowledges that all inventions, discoveries, and intellectual property created during the term of employment, whether or not during business hours or using company resources, are the sole property of Orion Verdi Labs. My lawyer, Daisy Lyle, sat across from me. Her reading glasses perched on her nose as she dissected each clause. We'd known each other since law school. I'd helped her pass physics while she'd saved me from failing constitutional law. Now she specialized in intellectual property disputes, particularly those involving inventors who'd been screwed by their employers. This is aggressive, even by tech industry standards, Daisy said, tapping her pen against the non-compete clause. They want you barred from working in renewable energy for 3 years. That's your entire field. They're scared, I said, pulling up the patent filing on my laptop. Look at the approval date. Daisy's eyes widened as she read the timestamp. 8:03, the exact minute they called you into that meeting. She leaned back, a slow smile spreading across her face. Naomi, please tell me you filed this independently. Every critical component was developed on my personal time. I confirmed. I have documentation timestamps from my home computer, receipts for materials I purchased myself, even coffee shop Wi-Fi logs showing where I was working on weekends. And the core technology. The pressure modulation algorithm is entirely mine. I wrote it in Python on my personal laptop, never touched the company servers. The base concept came from my master's thesis predating my employment by 5 years. Daisy removed her glasses, cleaning them slowly as she processed the implications. They're going to claim you used company resources for testing and development. I used the lab for basic prototyping, yes, but the breakthrough, the actual innovation that makes it work, happened in my apartment. I built a miniature test chamber in my spare bedroom. My neighbors complained about the noise. Do you have proof? I pulled out a folder thick with receipts, photos, and printouts. Every component purchased with my credit card, date-stamped photos of the home setup, even noise complaints from building management that corroborate the testing timeline. Daisy whistled low. You've been planning this. I've been protecting myself, I corrected. When Morrison started sniffing around my work 6 months ago, I knew something was coming. They wanted the converter, but they wanted it without me. Why fire you at all? Why not just wait until you documented everything in their system? I laughed, bitter and short. Because I refused to input the core algorithms into their database, claimed I was still refining them, needed more time. Victor was getting impatient. The Series D investors wanted to see the technology before committing, so they figured they'd fire you, force you to sign this. She gestured at the agreement. And then reverse engineer what you'd already built in the lab. Except they can't, not without the pressure modulation sequence. They have a shell impressive looking, but functionally useless, like having a Ferrari without an engine. Daisy stood, pacing to the window. Outside, Austin's skyline shimmered in the afternoon heat. You know what happens when you refuse to sign this? War, I said simply. They'll sue you into the ground, claim theft of trade secrets, breach of fiduciary duty, whatever they can throw at the wall. Let them... I closed the folder. Decision crystallizing. I've got $17,000 in savings, a valid patent, and a very pissed-off sense of justice. Daisy turned, studying me. You could sign it, take the severance, wait out the non-compete, then develop something new. While they profit from my work, while Victor takes credit for my breakthrough. I shook my head. I've got a better idea. I pulled up my phone, showing her an email thread. Solar Spire Innovations in Denver. I've been doing remote consulting for them on weekends all above board. Victor signed off on it last year. They're small but ambitious. More importantly, they're entering the National Clean Energy Competition. The one with the $15 million prize. And federal contracts worth 10 times that. Orion Verde is entering with my converter, or what they think is my converter. Imagine their faces when Solar Spire shows up with the real thing. Daisy sat back down, lawyer mode fully engaged. Timeline. The competition is in 2 months. Orion will need at least 3 weeks to realize their prototype doesn't work properly. Another 2 weeks of panic as they try to fix it. By then, I'll have filed the complete documentation with Solar Spire and will be ready for public demonstration. They'll seek an injunction. Based on what their employment agreement versus my prior patent, my documented independent development, they'll be laughed out of court. Daisy began typing rapidly on her laptop. I'll draft your response to their separation agreement. Short and sweet, you decline their terms pending further legal review. That'll buy us time while keeping them guessing. My phone buzzed. Victor. Texting personally. Naomi, I hope you're not making this difficult. We've been more than fair. Fair. They'd stolen my work, destroyed my career, and expected me to thank them for the privilege. I thought of all the nights I'd spent in that lab, all the breakthroughs that came from my sweat and brilliance, all the credit that would go to men who couldn't even understand what I'd built. One more thing, I told Daisy. When this goes public, I want every document, every patent filing, every technical specification to have my name prominently displayed, not buried in footnotes or acknowledgments, front and center. Inventor Naomi Clark. That's unusual. Most filings just list. I know what's usual, I interrupted. This isn't about usual. This is about making sure that when Orion Verde's investors Google that $15 million technology, they see my name, not Victor's. Daisy grinned, the kind of smile that had terrified opposing counsel for years. You want to salt the earth? I want them to remember that they called me a poor fit, I said, standing to shake her hand. And I want that memory to cost them everything. As I left Daisy's office, my phone buzzed again, this time from Dr. Morrison. Naomi, I'm having trouble accessing the pressure modulation files. Could you send me your personal notes just to ensure a smooth transition? I typed back, all company materials have been returned as requested. Best of luck with the project. Then I blocked his number. The 48 hours were up, and I hadn't signed a thing. Let the war begin. The Austin Convention Center buzzed with the forced enthusiasm of 1,000 engineers pretending to network. The Southwest Renewable Energy Summit was the kind of event where deals were made over mediocre coffee and careers were launched or destroyed by PowerPoint presentations. I shouldn't have been there, My Orion Verde badge had been deactivated 2 weeks ago, but press passes were surprisingly easy to obtain when you knew the right journalists. I stood at the back of Conference Hall B, watching Victor command the stage like a televangelist selling salvation. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the crown jewel of Orion Verde's future, the green flux converter. My converter, my design, my 3 years of blood and caffeine, rebranded with their marketing department's soulless nomenclature. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor announced, his voice reverberating through the sound system, "Orion Verde Labs is proud to present the future of waste-to-energy conversion. The green flux converter represents a breakthrough in thermal energy recovery, achieving unprecedented efficiency rates." The prototype gleamed under the stage lights' polished chrome and brushed steel, hiding the fact that it was essentially a very expensive paperweight. They'd replicated the exterior perfectly, down to the inlet valves I'd specified for optimal flow rates. But without my pressure modulation algorithm, they might as well have built a toaster. "Our team, led by Dr. Richard Morrison," Victor continued, gesturing to where Morrison stood, trying to look brilliant, "has created something truly revolutionary. We expect market deployment within 18 months. The audience applauded. Investors in the front row leaned forward, checkbooks metaphorically ready. I snapped photos with my phone, documenting every claim, every technical specification they displayed, every lie wrapped in corporate speak. Then came the demonstration. Morrison stepped forward, connecting the prototype to a waste input chamber filled with organic material. The machine hummed to life, displays lighting up with what should have been real-time conversion data. Instead, I recognized the pattern immediately. They were running a simulation, feeding pre-recorded data to the displays while the actual converter did nothing but make impressive noises. "As you can see," Morrison explained, pointing to the efficiency readings, "we're achieving a 72% conversion rate." 72%. They'd actually downgraded my work to make it seem more believable. My algorithm achieved 87% on a bad day. I typed rapidly on my phone, sending observations to Daisy. Every false claim was potential ammunition for later. Every technical impossibility they promised was evidence of their desperation. During the Q&A session, a venture capitalist asked the question I'd been waiting for: "What's your patent protection strategy?" This seems like technology competitors would want to reverse engineer. Victor's smile never wavered. "Our IP portfolio is comprehensive. All core technologies are protected under patents assigned to Orion Verde Labs. We've taken every precaution to secure our innovations." That's when I noticed a slight flicker in the display, a momentary glitch that revealed the simulation beneath. Morrison saw it too, his face paling as he quickly moved to block the audience's view, while an assistant adjusted something. After the presentation, I wandered the exhibition floor, invisible in my press badge and unremarkable blazer. The Orion Verde booth drew crowds, their marketing teams spinning dreams of a cleaner future, while engineers who should have known better nodded along to technical specifications that defied physics. I stopped at a smaller booth in the corner, Solar Spire Innovations. The contrast was stark. No chrome polish, no LED displays, just a simple banner and 2 engineers explaining their current projects to anyone who'd listen. I'd been consulting with them for 8 months, helping optimize their solar panel efficiency. They were good people, honest, dedicated, and about to become my business partners. "Sarah," I said, approaching the booth. Sarah Martinez, Solar Spire's co-founder, looked up from her laptop. Her eyes widened with recognition, then concern. "Naomi, I heard about Orion. I'm so sorry." "Don't be," I interrupted. "I have a proposal." An hour later, we sat in a quiet corner of the convention center cafe. I'd shown Sarah the patent documentation, explained the real capabilities of the pressure modulation system, and watched her engineer's mind grasp the implications immediately. "This could work," she said slowly, "but Orion will come after us with everything they have." "They'll try," I agreed, "but they're about to have bigger problems." I pulled up my laptop, showing her a series of emails I'd received over the past week, former colleagues, speaking carefully around their NDAs, reporting strange issues with the Greenflux prototype. Morrison had called in 3 different consulting firms, each sworn to secrecy, each failing to solve the fundamental problem without my algorithm. The converter couldn't maintain stable pressure differentials. It would work for short bursts long enough for a stage demonstration, but any sustained operation caused cascading failures. They're planning a live demonstration for investors next month, I explained. Full-scale operation, third-party verification, the works. When it fails, and it will fail spectacularly, they'll be exposed. Sarah leaned back, processing, and we'll be ready with the real thing. I can have a working prototype built in 6 weeks. I know every specification by heart. And more importantly, I know what they got wrong. Their version is like a symphony missing half the notes. It might sound impressive to untrained ears, but any expert will hear the discord. What do you need from us? Partnership, not employment. I incorporate my IP into SolarSpire as a co-founder. We enter the national clean energy competition together. When we win, and we will win, the technology launches under both our names. Sarah extended her hand. Welcome to SolarSpire, Dr. Clark. As we shook hands, my phone lit up with notifications. Victor had posted on LinkedIn, celebrating the overwhelming success of the Greenflux presentation. The comments were full of congratulations, investor interest, and industry excitement. I smiled, thinking of the prototype sitting in my apartment, the real one, built with my own hands and my own genius. In 6 weeks, Orion Verde would stand before those same investors, trying to explain why their revolutionary technology had suddenly stopped working. And I'd be there, not in the audience this time, but on stage, showing the world what real innovation looked like. One condition, I told Sarah as we prepared to leave. When we file the competition entry, I want the inventor credits to be crystal clear. Every document, every presentation, every piece of marketing material shows inventor Naomi Clark, not the team at SolarSpire or our brilliant engineers, my name. Sarah nodded, understanding. They tried to erase you. They tried, I confirmed, watching Victor work the crowd, shaking hands and promising revolutions he couldn't deliver. Now I'm going to show them what erasure really looks like. The Denver air hit different at 5,000 feet, thinner, cleaner, carrying the promise of new beginnings. I'd been living out of a residence inn for 3 weeks. My apartment transformed into a makeshift laboratory where the real Novacell was taking shape. Sarah had offered me space at SolarSpire's facility, but I needed privacy for this phase. Too many eyes, even friendly ones, could compromise what I was building. My fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision. Line after line of code flowing into existence. The pressure modulation algorithm wasn't just mathematics, it was poetry written in Python. Each function a stanza in an epic that would soon rewrite the renewable energy industry. The prototype sat on my dining table, surrounded by diagnostic equipment I'd purchased with my dwindling savings. Where Orion's Greenflux was all show, Novacell was pure function, no chrome polish, no LED displays, just raw efficiency wrapped in utilitarian steel. I'd improved the original design by 20%, finding optimizations that had eluded me in Orion's sterile lab environment. Necessity, it seemed, bred innovation. Sarah called at 11:43 p.m., her voice tight with barely contained excitement. The Department of Energy just released the competition guidelines. Naomi, they've added a new category, Breakthrough Innovation in Waste Management. The prize pool doubled. $30 million, plus priority consideration for federal implementation contracts, the kind of opportunity that transformed startups into industry leaders overnight. How's our timeline? Sarah asked. I ran diagnostics on the prototype, watching the efficiency readings climb steadily. 6 days ahead of schedule, the new pressure sensors arrived this morning, military grade, capable of handling variations the original design couldn't dream of. And Orion. I minimized the diagnostic window, pulling up a folder I'd labeled Schadenfreude. Inside were screenshots from engineering forums, LinkedIn posts from increasingly panicked Orion employees. And my favorite, a job posting for a senior thermal dynamics specialist with extensive experience in pressure modulation systems, posted by Orion just 2 days ago. "They're hemorrhaging talent," I reported. 3 senior engineers jumped ship last week. Morrison's been spotted at MIT, trying to poach graduate students. They know the investor demonstration is coming, and they know they're not ready. "Good." Sarah's satisfaction was audible. "I've been working on our presentation strategy. The DOE wants live demonstrations, third-party verification, and full technical documentation. We'll be ready for all 3. After the call, I returned to my work. The beauty of the algorithm lay in its elegance, complex enough to be irreplicable without understanding the underlying physics, simple enough to implement with standard industrial equipment. I'd spent years developing it, but the final breakthrough had come from failure. A miscalculation in pressure timing that should have caused system collapse instead revealed a harmonic resonance that amplified energy conversion. My phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, then recognized the area code. Austin. "Dr. Clark, this is James Witherspoon from Orion's board. I'd like to discuss a consulting arrangement. Discreet, of course. Generous compensation for your expertise." I screenshotted the message, forwarding it to Daisy with a single word, evidence. The board was fracturing. When the captain starts offering lifeboats to the crew he'd thrown overboard, the ship is already sinking. I worked through the night, fueled by coffee and vindication. At 3:17 a.m., the prototype achieved 91% efficiency, 4 points higher than my best results at Orion. I documented everything. Photos and videos time-stamped and backed up to 3 different cloud services. Daisy had taught me well in patent disputes. Documentation was ammunition. By dawn, Novacell was ready for scaled production. I'd created comprehensive blueprints, sourcing guides, and assembly instructions that any competent manufacturer could follow. Unlike Orion's black box approach, designed to hide their lack of understanding, my documentation was transparent. Every component, every connection, every line of code was explained in detail. Sarah arrived at 7:30 a.m. with breakfast and a contract manufacturer. Tom Nguyen owned a small precision engineering firm that had worked with SolarSpire before. He examined the prototype with the reverence of someone who understood what he was seeing. "This is elegant," he said, running his fingers along the pressure chambers. "Your thermal flow design, it's like you've made the waste want to become energy." "Can you build 5 units in 3 weeks?" Sarah asked. For this, Tom grinned. "I'll build you 50 if you need them. My team's been waiting for something meaningful to work on." We spent the morning reviewing manufacturing specifications. I insisted on being present for the first production run, needing to ensure every detail matched my vision. Tom's facility was a far cry from Orion's gleaming labs, but his team had something more valuable than expensive equipment. They had passion. That afternoon, while overseeing component assembly, I received another message, this time from Morrison himself. "Naomi, I know we didn't part on the best terms, but I'm hoping we can have a professional conversation. The industry is small, and I believe we could find a mutually beneficial arrangement. Please call me." I showed it to Sarah, who laughed out loud. "Mutually beneficial, they're desperate." "Beyond desperate," I agreed. "They've got 4 weeks until their investor demonstration, and they just realized their 72% efficiency claim was optimistic. The real number is probably closer to 40% if they can maintain stability for more than 10 minutes. The first Novacell unit came off Tom's production line at 4:26 p.m. We connected it to a test chamber filled with cafeteria waste coffee grounds, food scraps, paper napkins. The machinery hummed to life with a sound I'd heard 1,000 times in my dreams. Displays lit up, showing real data from real energy conversion. No simulations, no pre-recorded feeds, just physics bending to human will. 90.7% efficiency, sustained for 2 hours without fluctuation. Tom's engineers applauded. Sarah wiped away tears she'd deny later. And I stood there, watching my creation work exactly as I designed it, feeling something I hadn't experienced since that morning in Victor's conference room justice. "We should leak this," Sarah suggested. "A few photos on social media. Get people talking before the competition." "Mine." "No," I said firmly. "Let Orion continue their charade. Let them promise the world based on technology they don't understand. When we reveal Novacell at the competition, I want it to be a complete surprise. I want them sitting in the audience, watching their future evaporate." That night, I updated my LinkedIn profile. Under current position, I simply wrote, "Co-founder and Chief Innovation Officer, Solar Spire Innovations, inventor of the Novacell energy conversion system." Within an hour, I had 17 connection requests from Orion employees. I ignored them all. The email arrived at 6:12 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 days before the National Clean Energy Competition deadline. Sarah forwarded it to me with a string of exclamation points that conveyed her shock better than words could. "Solar Spire Innovations announces revolutionary Novacell technology patent holder Dr. Naomi Clark to demonstrate breakthrough at national competition." Our press release had gone live at midnight, synchronized across tech blogs, industry publications, and social media. The response was immediate and explosive. My phone vibrated continuously with notifications, but one name kept appearing: Victor Branson. 7 missed calls, 12 text messages, each more frantic than the last. I sipped my coffee, reading the press coverage on my laptop. TechCrunch had picked up the story, comparing Novacell's claimed 91% efficiency to GreenFlux's 72%. The article included a particularly damning paragraph. Industry insiders report that Dr. Clark, formerly lead mechanical engineer at Orion Verde Labs, filed the core patents independently before her controversial termination. Patent records confirm Clark as the sole inventor of the pressure modulation technology that appears central to both Novacell and Orion's GreenFlux converter. My phone rang again. This time, I answered. "Naomi." Victor's voice had lost its corporate polish. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "I'm drinking coffee and reading the news," I replied calmly. "Exciting developments in renewable energy today. Don't you think?" "You know damn well what I'm talking about. That technology was developed at Orion." "The patent filing says otherwise," I interrupted. "Filed 6 months ago. Approved the morning you fired me. Remarkable timing, really." Silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of his realization. "We can make this right," he said finally. "Come back to Orion. Name your price. Senior VP position. Equity stake. Whatever you want." "I want my name on my invention," I said. "And according to this morning's press coverage, I already have that." "You're making a mistake, Naomi. We have resources you can't imagine. Legal teams that will bury you in litigation for years." "Sue me," I challenged. "Please, I'd love to present my documentation in court. Every timestamp, every receipt, every email where Morrison begged for my personal notes after you'd fired me. Did you know he offered me $50,000 last week for a consultation? I have that in writing, too." The sound of Victor's breathing filled the silence. Heavy, defeated. "The board is meeting this afternoon," he said quietly. "If you announce that Novacell uses completely different technology, unrelated to your work at Orion, we might be able to salvage our investor demonstration next week." I laughed, genuine and loud. "You want me to lie? To say that the converter you've been parading around has nothing to do with my patents? It would be mutually beneficial." "No," I cut him off. "You had your chance to be beneficial when I was pouring my soul into that lab. When I was solving problems your entire R&D department couldn't crack. You chose poor fit instead." I hung up and blocked his number. The Solar Spire office buzzed with controlled chaos. Tom's team had delivered 5 perfect Novacell units, each tested to exhaustion and performing flawlessly. Sarah coordinated with the DOE representatives, ensuring our demonstration slot was confirmed. The media attention had attracted 3 major investors who wanted private demonstrations before the competition. "CNN wants an interview," Sarah announced, waving her tablet. Tech correspondent wants to discuss the patent dispute angle. Schedule it, I decided. Full transparency. Let's show them the patent documents, the development timeline, everything. That afternoon, I sat in Solar Spire's conference room, a far cry from Orion's mahogany and leather facing a camera crew. The correspondent, Marcus Chen, had done his homework. Dr. Clark, Orion Verde Labs claims you developed this technology using their resources. How do you respond? I pulled out my laptop, displaying the meticulous documentation I'd prepared. Every breakthrough happened in my apartment. Here's the prototype I built with components purchased on my personal credit card. Here are the development logs from my home computer, showing work done exclusively on weekends and evenings. But you were employed by Orion during this time. I was, and if they'd valued my contributions, I'd probably still be there, and Novacell would be green flux. I looked directly at the camera. But they decided I wasn't a cultural fit, so I took my culture and my patents elsewhere. What about their upcoming investor demonstration? I smiled. I wish them the best of luck with their 72% efficiency claims. The interview aired that evening. By 9 p.m., Novacell V's green flux was trending on Twitter. Engineering forums dissected the technical claims, with several prominent physicists publicly questioning how Orion could achieve their stated efficiency without the pressure modulation system I'd patented. At 11:53 p.m., Daisy called with news that made everything worthwhile. Orion's stock dropped 12% in after-hours trading, she reported. 3 institutional investors have requested emergency meetings, and here's the best part. Morrison just quit, effective immediately. I stood on my hotel balcony, looking out at Denver's lights, somewhere in Austin. Victor was probably in another emergency board meeting, trying to explain how their revolutionary technology had evaporated overnight. Morrison was updating his resume, his reputation as an innovator destroyed by his willingness to steal credit, and their prototype, that shiny chrome-plated lie, sat in a lab, as useful as a modern art sculpture. Daisy, I said, remember when they offered me 3 months severance to stay quiet? I remember. What do you think Novacell will be worth after we win the competition? She laughed. Conservative estimate. With the DOE contracts and private sector interest, $800 million, minimum. $890 million, my mind corrected, remembering the latest valuation models. Not that precision mattered anymore. What mattered was that tomorrow, I'd stand on a stage and show the world what happened when you called a brilliant woman a poor fit. My phone buzzed one last time, an email from the DOE competition coordinator. Dr. Clark, we've received numerous inquiries about your demonstration tomorrow. To accommodate media interest, we've moved Solar Spire to the main stage. Prime afternoon slot. Congratulations on the tremendous attention Novacell has generated. Main stage, where Orion Verde had been scheduled to present. I went to bed that night, knowing that in less than 24 hours, justice wouldn't just be served, it would be broadcast live to the entire energy industry. The Washington Convention Center's main auditorium could hold 3,000 people. Every seat was filled. Standing room had been claimed an hour before our presentation. The overflow crowd watched on screens in the lobby, their excitement palpable even through video feeds. I stood backstage, adjusting the microphone pack clipped to my blazer. Sarah paced nearby, reviewing our presentation notes one final time. The Novacell unit waited on stage, covered by a simple black cloth, no theatrical lighting, no chrome polish, just engineering excellence waiting to be revealed. Orion's here, Sarah whispered, glancing at her phone. Victor, the entire board, and what's left of their engineering team, they're in the VIP section. Good, I said. I want them to have the best possible view. The DOE administrator took the stage, her voice carrying the weight of federal authority. Ladies and gentlemen, our next presentation has generated unprecedented interest in the competition's history. Please welcome Dr. Naomi Clark and Solar Spire Innovations, presenting the Novacell Energy Conversion System. I walked onto that stage feeling the weight of every sleepless night, every dismissed idea, Every moment they'd told me I wasn't enough. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it. My focus narrowed to the presentation ahead, and the faces in the VIP section, Victor's rigid jaw, board members shifting uncomfortably, former colleagues who'd avoided eye contact after my termination now unable to look away. "Good afternoon," I began, my voice steady and clear. "My name is Dr. Naomi Clark. I am the inventor of the pressure modulation system that makes true high-efficiency waste-to-energy conversion possible. Today, I'm going to show you what 91% efficiency looks like." I pulled away the black cloth, revealing NovaCell in all its utilitarian glory. No marketing polish, no deceptive LED displays, just the physical manifestation of 3 years of obsessive dedication. "Before we begin," I continued, "I want to address the patent documentation that's been the subject of recent discussion." The screens behind me lit up with images, patent filings, timestamps. The crucial approval notification dated 8:03 a.m. on that Tuesday morning. Each document clearly showed inventor Naomi Clark. Every component of the pressure modulation system was developed independently, filed 6 months before my departure from my previous employer. I let that sink in, watching Victor's face redden. The full documentation has been provided to the competition committee and is available for public review. Sarah wheeled out a container of mixed organic waste cafeteria scraps, agricultural residue, even shredded paper, real waste, not the carefully curated samples competitors typically used. NovaCell doesn't discriminate, I explained, pouring the mixture into the input chamber. Unlike systems that require specific waste types or pre-processing, our pressure modulation algorithm adapts in real time to whatever organic material you feed it. I initiated the startup sequence, my fingers moving across the control panel with practiced ease. The machine hummed to life, not the aggressive roar of forced efficiency, but the steady pulse of optimized engineering. The display showed real-time data, input mass, processing temperature, pressure differentials, and most importantly, energy output climbing steadily. 70% efficiency, I announced as the numbers climbed. This is where most current systems plateau. 75%, 80, 85. In the VIP section, Victor had his phone out, frantically typing. Board members leaned forward, whispering urgently among themselves. 90%, I said as the display crossed that threshold. And still climbing. The audience was silent now, the only sound NovaCell's steady operation. Scientists from the national labs scribbled notes, investors pulled out calculators, and in the front row, the DOE Evaluation Committee watched with undisguised fascination. 91.3%. Sustained, stable. This is not a simulation, I emphasized. This is not cherry-picked data or laboratory conditions. This is NovaCell converting waste to usable energy at rates the industry said were theoretically impossible. I began the technical explanation, diving deep into the pressure modulation mathematics. On the screens, animations showed how the algorithm created harmonic resonances that amplified energy extraction at the molecular level. I explained the breakthrough, the failed calculation that had revealed the hidden pattern everyone else had missed. The beauty of this system, I said, is its scalability. The same principles that work in this unit can be applied to industrial-scale installations. Imagine waste treatment plants that generate more energy than they consume, landfills that become power stations, agricultural operations that convert their waste streams into profit centers. A hand shot up from the audience, a physicist from MIT, whose papers I'd studied religiously. "Dr. Clark, the pressure differentials you're maintaining, how do you prevent cascade failures in the modulation cycles?" I smiled. This was exactly the question Morrison had never been able to answer about green flux. "Excellent question," I replied, pulling up a detailed schematic. "The key is in the predictive algorithm. Instead of reactive adjustments, NovaCell anticipates pressure variations and precompensates. Here, let me show you." I dove into the technical details, equations flowing across the screens. In the VIP section, I caught a glimpse of Orion's remaining engineers taking photos, trying desperately to understand what they'd failed to replicate. After 30 minutes of operation, I performed a live shutdown and restart, demonstrating Novacell's reliability. The system powered down gracefully, then resumed operation within 90 seconds, immediately returning to peak efficiency. Ladies and gentlemen, I concluded, Novacell is not just an incremental improvement, it's a fundamental reimagining of what waste-to-energy conversion can achieve, and it's ready for deployment today. The presentation ended with specifications, manufacturing costs, deployment timelines, projected returns on investment. Sarah joined me on stage to discuss SolarSpire's production capabilities and partnership opportunities. Then came the question everyone had been waiting for. A journalist near the back stood up. Dr. Clark, can you comment on the similarities between Novacell and Orion Verde's GreenFlux system? I paused, choosing my words carefully. I can only speak to Novacell's development, which is fully documented and patented. Any similarities to other systems would be interesting to explore in the appropriate legal venues. The audience erupted in questions. I answered them all: technical challenges, scaling considerations, environmental impact assessments. For 45 minutes, I stood on that stage and showed the world what I'd built, what I'd protected, and what no one could take from me. As we finally left the stage, Sarah grabbed my arm. "Look," she whispered, gesturing toward the VIP section. Half the Orion contingent had already left. Victor remained, slumped in his chair, staring at the empty stage where Novacell had just rewritten his company's future. A board member, the one who'd sent the consulting offer, approached us. "Dr. Clark," he said quietly, "that was extraordinary. If you're ever interested in discussing opportunities—" "I'm not," I cut him off. "I found my fit." We pushed through the crowd, accepting congratulations, exchanging business cards with potential partners. 3 major utilities wanted exclusive demonstrations. The DOE committee requested detailed technical documentation. Bloomberg wanted an interview about the David and Goliath story of energy innovation. But the moment that mattered most came as we were leaving. A young woman, probably fresh from engineering school, stopped me near the exit. "Dr. Clark," she said, eyes bright with excitement. "I've been following your story since the patent news broke. You've shown us that we don't have to accept being erased, that we can protect our work and demand recognition. Thank you." I shook her hand, remembering my own younger self, brilliant and naive, believing that good work would speak for itself. "What's your name?" I asked. "Lisa Park. I'm starting my PhD in thermal dynamics next fall." "Lisa," I said, "document everything, date stamp your ideas, file patents early, and never, ever let them call you a poor fit when what they mean is too powerful to control." She nodded, understanding passing between us the knowledge that every woman in STEM carries, and the determination to change it. That night, the competition results would be announced. Novacell would win the Breakthrough Innovation category and its $30 million prize. Federal contracts would follow, but standing there, watching Lisa walk away with renewed purpose, I'd already won everything that mattered. The federal courthouse in Austin stood like a monument to justice delayed, but not denied. 6 weeks after Novacell's triumph at the national competition, Orion Verde had made good on Victor's threat. They'd filed suit against me, SolarSpire, and anyone else they could name, claiming theft of trade secrets, breach of fiduciary duty, and patent infringement. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They were suing me for stealing my own invention. I sat at the defendant's table, Daisy to my right, Sarah to my left, across the aisle. Orion's legal team looked like an Army 6 attorneys in identical suits, backed by paralegals and technical experts. Victor sat behind them, his face a mask of corporate determination. The company's future hinged on this case. Without Novacell's technology, GreenFlux was worthless, and everyone knew it. Judge Patricia Hernandez called the court to order at 9:15 a.m. She'd reviewed the preliminary filings, thousands of pages of documentation from both sides. Her expression suggested she wasn't impressed with Orion's claims. "Mr. Fitzgerald," she addressed Orion's lead counsel, You're alleging that Dr. Clark developed the pressure modulation system using company resources. Present your evidence. Fitzgerald stood, his silver hair gleaming under courtroom lights. Your Honor, we'll demonstrate that Dr. Clark had access to Orion's proprietary research, used company laboratories for testing, and developed her system during work hours. He presented exhibit after exhibit, lab access logs showing my late nights, equipment requisitions, even cafeteria receipts proving I'd eaten dinner at the office. It was thorough, expensive, and completely beside the point. When he finished, Judge Hernandez turned to Daisy. Ms. Lyle. Daisy stood slowly, a slight smile playing at her lips. Your Honor, we don't dispute that Dr. Clark worked long hours at Orion Verde. We don't dispute that she used their lab for basic prototyping. What we dispute is that any of this matters. She pulled up her first exhibit, my master's thesis from 7 years ago. The fundamental concept of pressure modulation for energy conversion appears here, in Dr. Va Clark's academic work, predating her employment at Orion by 5 years. The mathematical framework, the theoretical foundation, all published under her name alone. Next came the home laboratory documentation, photos time-stamped over 18 months, showing the progression from crude prototype to refined system, receipts for every component, all purchased with my personal funds, utility bills showing the power spikes from testing, noise complaints from neighbors corroborating the timeline. But the crucial evidence, Daisy continued, is the code itself. She presented the algorithm, not the whole thing, but enough to prove its origin. This code was written on Dr. Clark's personal laptop, never touched Orion's servers. We have Git commits showing development history, all tagged to her personal email, all created during non-work hours. Fitzgerald objected. Your Honor, the timing is suspicious. Dr. Clark filed her patent just months before termination. Because I knew what was coming, I said. Breaking protocol. Judge Hernandez raised an eyebrow but didn't stop me. Morrison had been circling my work for months. They needed my converter for their Series D funding, but they didn't need me. Dr. Clark, the judge warned gently, please let your attorney speak for you. Daisy continued, but the damage was done. My words hung in the air, raw truth that no legal maneuvering could obscure. Then came the devastating blow to Orion's case. Daisy presented an email thread between Morrison and Victor, dated 2 weeks before my termination. We need Clark's documentation before Q3, she read aloud. The investors won't commit without seeing the technology. If she won't cooperate, we may need to consider alternatives. Objection, Fitzgerald called. Privileged communication. Actually, Daisy smiled. Dr. Morrison forwarded this thread to a T when he requested elevated access to Dr. Clark's directories. It became part of the corporate record. The courtroom stirred. Victor's face had gone pale. There's more, Daisy continued. She pulled up Morrison's signed testimony from his exit interview. In his haste to distance himself from the failing Green Flux project, he'd admitted trying to access my personal files, admitted that the core algorithm was Clark's domain exclusively, admitted that without it, the converter was an expensive decoration. Judge Hernandez leaned forward. Mr. Fitzgerald, does your client have any evidence that the specific pressure modulation algorithm, the actual innovation that makes the converter function, was developed using Orion's resources? Fitzgerald shuffled papers, consulting with his team. Your Honor, the development happened while Dr. Clark was employed. That's not what I asked, the judge interrupted. Do you have evidence that this specific algorithm, the one Dr. Clark patented independently, was created using company resources? Silence stretched across the courtroom. Finally, Fitzgerald admitted. No direct evidence, Your Honor, but the timing suggests. The timing suggests, Judge Hernandez said sharply, that Dr. Ray Clark was prudent in protecting her intellectual property. Is there anything else? Orion's team made a few more attempts arguing about implied contracts, about the spirit versus letter of employment agreements, but everyone could see the case crumbling. Then Daisy delivered the final blow. Your Honor, we'd like to present one last piece of evidence, a comparison between Orion's green flux converter and Novacell. On the courtroom screens, two sets of performance data appeared side by side. Green Flux's struggling 43% efficiency versus Novacell's steady 91%. If Dr. Clark had truly developed her technology using Orion's resources, Daisy said, wouldn't Orion's own product actually work? Muffled laughter rippled through the gallery. Even Judge Hernandez suppressed a smile. Your Honor, Daisy concluded, Orion Verde had every opportunity to value Dr. Clark's contributions. Instead, they terminated her employment, calling her a poor fit. They made their choice. Now they must live with the consequences. The judge called a recess. When we returned an hour later, her ruling was swift and decisive. The court finds no evidence that Dr. Clark's patented pressure modulation system was developed using Orion Verde's resources. The patent stands as filed. Furthermore, this court finds Orion's lawsuit to be without merit, bordering on frivolous. Dr. C. Clark and Solar Spire are free to continue development and commercialization of Novacell technology. She paused, looking directly at Victor. Mr. Branson, your company had a brilliant engineer creating revolutionary technology. You chose to value corporate politics over innovation. This court will not reward that choice. Additionally, she continued, given the evidence of attempted unauthorized access to Dr. Clark's personal files and the bad faith nature of this lawsuit, I'm awarding legal fees to the defendants. Orion Verde will pay all costs associated with this action. The gavel came down with finality. In the hallway afterward, reporters swarmed. I pushed through them, needing air, needing space to process what had just happened. Sarah caught up with me outside. Stock price, she said, showing me her phone. Orion's down 37%. Trading halted. Behind us, Victor emerged from the courthouse, immediately surrounded by reporters shouting questions about Greenflux's future, about the board's confidence, about everything he'd built crumbling in real time. Our eyes met across the chaos. For a moment, I saw not the corporate titan who'd dismissed me, but a man watching his empire collapse. He'd bet everything on stolen innovation and lost. I turned away. There would be no satisfaction in watching his fall. My revenge was complete the moment Judge Hernandez recognized what had always been true. The innovation was mine. The patent was mine. The future was mine. DOE called during the hearing, Sarah said as we reached our car. They want to fast-track Novacell deployment. Initial contract value, $890 million over 5 years. $890 million. The exact figure from my calculations, from my dreams, from my determination to prove that brilliance couldn't be erased by corporate decree. What now? Sarah asked. I thought of all the late nights, all the stolen credit, all the times they'd tried to minimize my worth. Then I thought of Lisa Park and all the young engineers who'd watched this case, who'd learned that documentation could be armor and patents could be swords. Now, I said, we build the future they tried to steal. The National Innovation Center gleamed under stage lights, its auditorium packed with industry leaders, government officials, and media from around the world. The annual Energy Innovation Awards had never generated this much attention, but then again, they'd never had a story quite like mine. I stood backstage, adjusting the microphone one final time. Through the monitors, I could see the audience energy secretaries from 12 countries, CEOs of major utilities, venture capitalists who'd collectively control billions in green technology investments. And there, in the back row, trying to remain invisible, sat Victor Branson. He'd resigned from Orion Verde 3 months ago, the day their stock hit its lowest point. The company had filed for restructuring. Greenflux officially abandoned. Morrison had reinvented himself as a consultant, though no one seemed interested in hiring someone whose greatest achievement was failing to steal innovation properly. Ladies and gentlemen, the host announced, please welcome the recipient of this year's Breakthrough Innovation Award, Dr. Naomi Clark. I walked onto that stage carrying the weight of every moment that had led here. The applause was deafening. but I barely heard it. My focus was on the podium, on the speech I'd written and rewritten a dozen times, on the truth I was about to speak. "Thank you," I began, waiting for the noise to settle. 2 years ago, I was fired from my position as lead engineer. My CEO looked me in the eye and told me I was no longer a fit for their vision. The audience was silent now, hanging on every word. He was right, I continued. I didn't fit their vision of taking credit for others' work. I didn't fit their culture of valuing politics over innovation. I didn't fit their system of erasing the contributions of those they deemed replaceable. Behind me, the screen lit up with images my home laboratory, the patent documents, the Novacell prototype that had changed everything. But here's what they didn't understand: fit is not about conforming to broken systems. It's about having the courage to build better ones. I talked about Novacell's deployment across 50 cities, about waste treatment plants now generating surplus energy, about landfills transformed into power stations. The numbers spoke for themselves. Carbon emissions reduced by millions of tons, energy costs cut by 60%. Communities that once struggled with waste management now profiting from it. The technology matters, I said. But this story isn't really about pressure modulation algorithms or energy conversion rates. It's about what happens when we protect our ideas, document our worth, and refuse to let anyone erase our contributions. The screen showed a new image: emails from hundreds of young engineers, especially women, who'd followed the case and started filing their own patents, protecting their own innovations, demanding their names be recognized. To everyone who's been told they don't fit, who's watched their work claimed by others, who's been erased from their own success stories, document everything, file your patents, know your worth, and never, ever let them convince you that brilliant is synonymous with disposable. I paused, finding Victor in the back row. Our eyes met across the auditorium. He looked older, smaller, like a man who'd learned too late that you can't build an empire on stolen foundations. "They said I was a poor fit," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. But I wasn't the one who didn't fit. I was the reason their system worked, and when they removed me, I became the reason it collapsed. The presentation concluded with technical details about Novacell's future next-generation improvements, pushing efficiency to 95%, partnerships with developing nations to address global waste crises, the creation of the Clark Foundation to support young inventors protecting their intellectual property. As I spoke these final words, the screen behind me displayed one last image: every document, every patent filing, every technical paper, all bearing the same clear attribution: inventor Naomi Clark. Innovation doesn't care about corporate hierarchies or political games, I concluded. It cares about truth, persistence, and the courage to claim what's yours. They called me a poor fit. They were right. I was never meant to fit into their small vision. I was meant to build something bigger. The standing ovation lasted 7 minutes. Awards were presented, photographs taken, history recorded. But as I stood there, holding the crystal trophy they'd given me, I thought about that morning 2 years ago, 8:03 a.m., the mahogany table, the termination letter sliding across its polished surface. They'd tried to erase me. Instead, they'd created a legend. Later, as I left the stage, a young woman approached another engineer, another brilliant mind navigating corporate waters. "Dr. Clark," she said, "I just wanted to say thank you. I filed my first patent last week. My name is on it, just like you taught us." I smiled, remembering Lisa Park, remembering all the others who'd found courage in my story. "What's your invention?" "A water purification system that runs on solar power. My boss tried to claim it was a team effort, but I had everything documented." "Good," I said. "Never let them forget whose idea it was. Never let them erase you." She walked away, and I stood there in the emptying auditorium, thinking about all the innovations that would be protected, all the inventors who would claim their work, all the systems that would change because one woman refused to disappear quietly. They'd called me a poor fit. They'd been absolutely right. I was a terrible fit for a system built on theft and erasure. So I'd built my own system, one where innovation was credited, where brilliance was valued, where names on patents meant something. $890 million, that's what Novacell was worth now, with contracts extending into the billions. But the real value wasn't in the money or the recognition. It was in the proof that documentation could be armor, that patents could be weapons, and that sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's success with your name branded on every single piece of it. They'd said, I didn't fit their vision. Now their vision was bankrupt, and mine was lighting up the world, one converter at a time, one patent at a time, one inventor Naomi Clark at a time. Thank you so much for listening to this story of innovation, determination, and sweet revenge. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Naomi's position? Have you ever had your work overlooked or stolen? Let's discuss in the comments below.